She's in our virtual green room right now, Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith. She's written an important book, one that is definitely a game changer, I know, because it was something I thought I was getting, but I wasn't getting, and I bet a lot of you fall into this category. Anybody could read this. Sacred Rest, Recover Your Life, Renew Your Energy, Restore Your Sanity. Dr. Smith, thanks for coming on.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
So I know, I can tell you've had a lot of success, obviously, in your career. Did you get to that point where you just were not getting the kind of rest you needed?
Yes, I burned out. As you stated, on the surface, my career looked very successful, but I got to a point where, it was all glitter and glam in the spotlight, but when I came home, I was exhausted. My attitude was not in a great place. My relationships were strained. And just mentally, physically, and emotionally, I was not in a good place.
So is that what led you to write this book?
It is. It led me to really the research first. And I really started the research on the process of, what is resilience? How do we manage stress, as people say, which I believe is a bit of a misconception. But how do we at least are able to recover from the stresses that come into our life and get to a better place? So that started the research. And then my own patients kind of pushed the book out because as I started working with them and seeing that so many of them were dealing with these very same rest deficits, and it wasn't something that was being discussed.
Yeah, it's interesting. The question is the big question. What really is rest? It's like when somebody tells you, oh, just get some rest, just relax. Is that rest? I mean, what is rest?
Well, I think what we have to realize is that rest, first of all, is more than just sleeping, because that's what many of us think. They think that rest is just stopping, the cessation of activity, laying down, and that's a part of it, but it's not the big picture. So when I looked at the research, what I saw was that rather than just putting all of our attention on the physical aspect of rest, which is primarily what sleeping does, that we needed to look at all areas of rest. And that's where the 7 types of rest came from, the physical, mental, emotional, social, sensory, and creative, being those other areas of our lives that get exhausted. So, when I was thinking to myself, I'm tired, I always thought, I'm tired, I just need to get 8 hours of sleep. But what happens when you get 8 hours and you wake up still exhausted? That's a real desperate situation, and that's when I realized there has to be more to rest than just stopping and sleeping.
Yeah. What was your big aha moment in all of this research?
I think the biggest aha moment was that when I just say that I'm tired, I'm actually setting myself up for failure. Because when I say I'm tired and I don't quantify and identify the area that's being fatigued, then I think any kind of rest will fix it. And the issue is, if I have an emotional rest deficit, going to sleep is not going to fix that. If I have a creative rest deficit, laying on the couch watching Netflix on Saturday is not going to fix that. So I have to be very intentional about doing those restorative type activities that will actually help to pour back into the place where I have the energy deficit.
Wow, I think you completely nailed it. You talked about the 7 types of rest. Could you give us kind of a sneak peek, 2 or 3 of them and what they are?
Well, the ones I think that were most interesting for myself and that I noticed that I had a deficit in, one of them was creative rest. That's a topic many people have never even heard of, a concept that's completely foreign. But if you're someone who does a lot of problem solving, has to think outside the box, be innovative, you're using creative energy even if you don't consider yourself to be a creative. And so the way you restore creative rest is by allowing yourself to appreciate beauty in whatever form, those things that are inspiring and that are motivating to you. And so that could include anything from watching theater or going to an art museum or listening to music or watching someone dance, or it can be natural beauty like going to the ocean or looking at flowers or being out doing a hike where you're enjoying nature. And I think we don't appreciate kind of how those different processes actually help us to be more productive and actually help us to be more innovative. Another type of rest that we found that a lot of people were deficient in is mental rest. A lot of us are tired. We lay down at night to go to sleep, and we can't get our brain to turn off. And we really have to look at what are the processes behind that keep our mind so active. And then what are some simple things we can do in the middle of our busy day? Not go on a sabbatical, not quit our jobs, not take extended vacations, but things we can do in the middle of our day to help to build in mental rest and to help us to be able to stay in a healthy place.
Wow. And, it's so interesting that there's as you said, what you uncovered, the different forms, really, honestly, of rest and the deep research that you did. You even have a free assessment at rest.com. And you're not surprised, I'm sure, but for you, this is so groundbreaking. It has to be rewarding to see the results of people reading your book, people working with you, and realizing the things that you learned. Is it?
It's been amazing. And yes, I think the most surprising has probably been the response to the free rest assessment at restquiz.com. We've had 250,000 people who've gone through there and taken the assessment, and the emails we get and the clients that we work with. It's amazing to see the effect it has. I think some of the biggest surprises have been, particularly in corporations that I work with, where we are kind of revamping their workforce because people are tired. People are exhausted. 2020 hit everyone really hard. And so there's a lot of people who are functional burnout. So they are still producing. They're just not producing at their highest quality and capacity. And so they're putting out work, but it's not really their best work. And it's interesting to see how many businesses are noticing this and then realize that there's something that is missing. And a lot of companies don't have, chief health wellness officers, but they would benefit from actually having someone come in and to help them evaluate the places where their workforce are actually experiencing chronic rest deficits. Because these are simple things that can really improve their overall productivity.
Yeah, and would you say, as a board-certified internal, medicine physician, in looking at the impact of wellness and what you found with rest, I mean, this has got to be like number one, I would say.
It's affecting people in so many different ways. From right now, some of the biggest, other than COVID, some of the biggest health issues we're facing have to do with cardiovascular disease and chronic metabolic states where people have high cortisol levels. And a big part of that is how our body responds to stress and change. And we've had lots of change. So we are processing a lot of stress and high cortisol situations. And most of us have not learned adequate coping mechanisms and strategies for being able to manage that. And that's why there's so much fatigue, and that's where there's so much talk about burnout. And really that's why, a lot of people are under kind of this chronic just anxiety and feeling just drained because they're not restoring the places that are actually in need of rest.
Yeah. And you've said this, but it's worth asking this question. Your book is Sacred Rest, Recover Your Life, Renew Your Energy, Restore Your Sanity. Ultimately, what do you hope people take away from reading your book?
The number one thing is that rest is something that they must value, because I think we've gotten into a mindset that it's more important to work and grind and produce. And we've taken out an understanding that to be able to do that at our highest level of ability and to do that and still have a smile on our face and enjoy the work that we're producing requires a time of rest, recovery, and restoration.
Yeah. And this is so many of us are people pleasers and don't have boundaries. You just got to find that somehow, right?
Well, that's a big part of the emotional rest, the people pleasing, the stress that comes, we call it performance stress. So a lot of people have a lot of performance stress that they endure during their jobs, and they don't understand why they go home from maybe a job where they're seated all day, why they're so tired. There's emotional labor that you may be putting out during your day that you have not even accounted for. And because we are not looking at really how we're using every part of our body in our day-to-day work, then it really does set us up for so many areas of rest deficit.
Yeah. Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith, Sacred Rest, Recover Your Life, Renew Your Energy, Restore Your Sanity. You can get it on Amazon.com and take the quiz, restquiz.com, and you'll see where you are maybe have some deficits. And boy, just really powerful stuff. Thank you so much for coming on.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.